the Supply and Chain Podcast with Leo and Kristine.
Hey guys, we're very excited to welcome Asif today. Asif is building new platform to help businesses in developing nations to connect to fashion lifestyle brands globally. He started with his native Bangladesh. Welcome, Asif.
Welcome, Asif, to the Supply and Chain Podcast.
Thank you, Leo, for inviting me to your podcast. Thank you, Kristine.
Cool. Well, let's head in and go with the first question. I must say, a classic in our podcast. Do you believe it's possible to achieve 100% transparency across the supply chain?
I believe, yes, it is possible to achieve 100% transparency across the whole fashion supply chain. But there's a lot of roadblocks, a lot of obstacles while we approach this problem. It requires a complete and all-round push from every party that's involved, starting from the brands all the way to the suppliers. 100% transparency actually means that every hand that is involved, and that means not only the tier one suppliers, but the material suppliers, the people who are picking the cotton, the farmers, everybody is incorporated into a whole chain. And it's visible to everybody, even the retail customer, even if somebody who's interested to buy that product. So H&M does this, or is trying to do this lately, that if you want to go and buy a product, it shows you what factory it came from, where the cotton is from. So they're trying, but I think that the transparency, if you mean transparency, it means everything. It's not just a portion of it, and then the rest of the portion is not shown. So we still have some ways to go, although they have promised the end of 2021 to be fully transparent. But I think we're still 3-4 years away from 100% transparency.
It's interesting that you mentioned to be fully transparent with everything. Do you think that it's convenient then for brands to show transparency? Because again, there are things that you might want to keep behind closed doors. Transparency includes a lot of commitment. So where do you think that should be transparency, and then let people figure out, yes, we have issues here when we're still working on them, or it should be more like let's work in-house first before we kind of show to the world how our supply chain is?
It's funny because this push of transparency only came when millennials started asking these questions and putting that pressure. Because I read this report from McKinsey that compared to Gen Z and baby boomers, we have about 10 to 6% more interest in millennials to find out where their products are coming from. So it is convenient. And I usually speak my mind versus making anybody happy. So it is very convenient for them to keep some aspects of the chain hidden, if you may, not transparent, because they only have a head office somewhere in maybe the capital of the country where they're sourcing from. And they only see the tier one suppliers. Now, tier one suppliers subcontract to other manufacturers. These manufacturers source their fabrics and their accessories from, let's say, markets that these brands probably have never been to even. Yeah. So these shopkeepers, they are receiving their products, let's say, from China, India. I'm talking especially from Bangladesh, what we've noticed through eRMG. Yeah. They receive these products, they're imported from China, India, because Bangladesh really doesn't locally produce their textile or the fabric. So when it's coming from a foreign nation, like recently, I don't know if you've seen an article that Bangladesh imported, I think, $63 million worth of cotton, organic cotton from India. And now the brands are asking for a receipt for that. And the suppliers can't provide a receipt that shows they're organic. So that's $63 million worth of loss. And I did the math, that's about 0.02% of my country's GDP. So that's a huge loss. So it is the fact that it's convenient for a lot of them. So that's why I said that we're still 3-4 years away of more pressure, more added pressure, and then more technology to be input into this. As they say, that technology is just a way to present the data, but people have to be more used to it. So that is why at eRMG, what we are trying to do is reach the roots level. So we're talking to suppliers of material. We are teaching them, we're training them that the importance of this information, that how they can expand their own business just by being more honest and transparent to their customers.
But do you think, it should come together with, I don't know, education or like expectation management on the customer as well? Because again, as you said, right, more than ever, people are interested where my product is coming from, but also it might mean that I might not like the answer. For example, you mentioned Bangladesh, which was a tragic example during COVID, right? Of like factory stores shutting down, and then pretty much people closing on factories, which again, because of what you're saying, that, and this is the main factory that is subcontracting to other factories, so this became like a domino effect in a biggest industry in Bangladesh. So, which means that again, there's still a lot to figure out, which is very unlikely to be solved in the next 3 to 4 years. So if we're talking full transparency, meaning, okay, I need to know if you are subcontracting, where's my subcontractor? Like, if we're claiming fair wages, we need to make sure that they are included in the fair wages. We're claiming, all these ESG standards. Well, they should be part of it too. But again, by keeping stuff under the rug, everybody wins, because the supplier can say, yeah, what I'm doing here is all legit, but let's not talk about who I'm subcontracting to. And for the brands, it's like, don't ask, don't tell, right? Because as long as you are compliant, I can say that all my suppliers are compliant, and I can put the label that it's compliant, and my customer, and I go to the store and it says that it's compliant, I am satisfied with, just to see that the tier ones, because again, this lack of transparency, the customer is happy to see that label, and okay, I guess I can pay $1 or $2 more for this because it's organic. So where do you see this journey going?
It's a handshake between the brands and the manufacturers. If the manufacturers are not taking care of if the brands are not taking care of their manufacturers by being transparent from not only tier one, but through the whole chain, so that when I go to Zara or when I go to H&M, when I go to any store, when I pick up a T-shirt, I want to know that, okay, where was this T-shirt from? Where was this before this store? The cotton or the whatever fabric, man-made fabric or anything, where is this from? Was this fair? Was the person who was making this, what happened to this person? What was going through their mind? Like, were they forced while they were making this piece of clothing for me? Like, I'm wearing an Express Polo t-shirt right now, and every time I wear this, I have to understand that who made this, what was going through him or her head, and were they forced, were they exploited? A lot of these wages, good thing you mentioned fair wages. A lot of the times when I hear about wages in these countries, I've lived there. I am straight from Dhaka, Bangladesh. I came to the US to study here, and I'm a resident here now. And when I hear these wages, it boggles my mind that how can a single human being survive in these cities that are developing nations, and prices are only going up. I hear the price of meat, I hear the price of milk, I hear the price of just daily living, rent, and I do the math. It doesn't add up.
Yeah.
For example, in Bangladesh, the minimum wage is 8,000 taka, which is approximately $94. Now, if you do the math, $94 for a month in Bangladesh, it's very tough. You have to have a partner who also works there. You probably will be living in one room and sharing the bathroom with other communal people. So it's tough. And I think that is the definition of exploiting your labor, that that you can set a minimum bar and that people will work for it because there's no other option. So this is one thing that I'm very passionate about, that I want to bring business to this zone not just Bangladesh, Indonesia, so that this whole zone can benefit from these added bonuses, and not just in the pockets of the owners, but the actual people who are doing it. So if we're transparent, if we are actually transparent, where we know that, okay, this piece of clothing actually was made by this factory, this unit, and in this unit, sure, tell me even like who was the manager of that unit and how much are they getting paid. I know GOTS makes this a requirement that you have to make sure your workers are happy. You'll notice that a lot of these factories in these nations, they're not GOTS certified unless they're working with major big brands, because they're only required to meet that criteria. That's it. But if you're not supposed to meet that GOTS criteria, they don't go for it because they need to keep their workforce under that bar. So, yeah, a lot of problems will come up when we go transparent. That's the whole process of it. A lot of people don't like, a lot of entities don't like to be critiqued. Yeah. But if you are not critiqued, you can't grow. You will not survive, actually, in the business world.
The market will take care of it. Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. If you can share a couple of examples from different new ways how to approach it, how can we actually go from now into those 3 years pipeline to actually get it more transparent? Is there new technologies you can suggest, perhaps any startups? I mean, we have, of course, you guys, we had Zilingo, Suchi in the US, right? There's a lot of progressive teams who are working towards it. Can you share your opinion here? I know it could be a bit biased, but
I actually am a big fan of what Zilingo is doing. One of our co-founders, he was a part of Nsinga, which was acquired by Zilingo. Mm-hmm. So in terms of new technologies, new innovations, I'm a big fan of blockchain, the whole technology of blockchain. I've been following it since I was a child, like teenager. And I think that if you want to be transparent, like true transparent, no outside bias, you have to subscribe to the idea of establishing a blockchain where every node that is connected, so the material supplier, the lace supplier, the fabric supplier, these countries, they're all developing, as I said. So everybody has a cell phone. Everybody knows how to use a tablet. If they don't, you have to train them. I know Sarah Krasty, I forget her startup, but they are trying to educate workers in Bangladesh, not only just factory workers, but these nodes that I say in Bangla. So they've developed an app or service where it's all in Bangla and there's no language barrier. You learn how to work through these technologies. So if you can connect all these parties onto a chain where no entity holds a moderation or moderator type of position. Mm-hmm. So I know that in the UK, they're developing something like this with IBM right now. And that's one of the main ones that's in my radar because IBM's AI is superior to a lot of everybody, basically, other than Google. There are a few startups that I know of. So Zilingo just, I think, started talking to another new one in Bangladesh called Merchant Bay. So they are a startup that are trying to connect the buyers to suppliers. And now if they connect with Zilingo, then that would mean great work for Zilingo and Merchant Bay as well. There's a startup in Bangladesh called Nitex. So they're working off the buying house model, but the way they work, I really appreciate it. They value what they're putting out there. Only a few certain factories that they work with. Mm-hmm. Technology-wise, they are working on insights, trend forecasting, style forecasting, so that they can be ahead before even like wasting fabric, wasting any lead time. But in my opinion, I think blockchain is the way to go. Like if you want to be fully transparent, if you want all parties to input what's happening and not worry that somebody is going to morph it when it goes in front of the retail customer, I think blockchain is the way to go. And eRMG is implementing this to some extent. The way we're doing it is that we don't host any e-auctions like a lot of these brands do. We actually take in factories, take in brands, and analyze their data. So one of our first asks is to supply us with your past data. We want to judge you based on what you have done in the past by not telling us what you've done. Just show us what you've done, and we will do the work for you. We will do the math for you. And depending on that, we rate you. And when you have a project, let's say you're a brand, you have a project, you build the whole product. Yep. And depending on what your past is, we match it with manufacturers whose data we've also analyzed. And we're not just believing what they tell us. We audit them. We physically visit them, random surprise visits. We try to surprise them in every way possible, basically. One of the first onboarding calls we have, I always make sure to mention this, that you will be surprised by the way we onboard. Like, you will not see anything that other people do. I will surprise you in every way. I will do forensic reports on you on the internet. I will literally look up everything related to your factory that is connected to a digital machine and analyze everything that you are doing versus you telling me what's happening. Because a lot of them don't tell you what's actually happening under the hood. So to only be able to establish that trust factor, the only thing we can do is analyze what they're actually doing. Yeah. So, and then we input it into this rating algorithm we've developed. It's inspired by the technology of blockchain. We have a machine learning expert, an engineer, and data scientist, and I myself have a background in physics. So we are taking this data, analyzing what they're doing, and then basically matching them and trying to make sure that it's properly matched, as in like the most compatible versus what they think works. Like, cutting prices is not a way I think we should do business. That means if you're cutting prices to get that order, it means your workers are probably getting paid less. Exactly. If you are cutting lead time, you're saying that, okay, I'll do this in 7 days versus 2 weeks. It means you're making somebody work overtime. It means that somebody is probably not getting paid for that overtime. So that's not something I get behind. I can't really support that. So we're trying to go the data-driven decision route versus what they are telling us.
Cool. I think it's interesting that you mentioned all these tools are helping with transparency. But again, transparency can show you the mess behind it. For that, it's important to have like a fluid communication, because there a lot of the messiness that happens. You just mentioned lead times, you just mentioned overtime, and all that can be avoided in advance if you have proper communication and you have visibility in your supply chain to know what measures to take or to be aware of the changes instead of the last minute, like, hey, hold up, like, like change of quantities, or which again, sadly, it's not uncommon in our industry. So what do you think are good tools and technologies to improve this fluid communication in our even more complex by the time supply chains?
A lot of these factories and brands, they use their own PLM softwares, their own whole chain management. I know Gap and a few of these big brands, they use something called CBX or something developed by CBX. They have their own claim system, their own whole like idea to design to sampling to any claims that come up during and after production, and then QC. So these are some tools that these big brands have, but if you go private label or somebody's a little smaller than the big names, they have to partner up with secondary organizations. Yeah. So if I have to name a few off the top of my head, I'm not that familiar with all of these technologies that are out there currently. So I can't really give you the best answer to like what tools are out there. But I know that in India, there's a new startup called Fashinza, and they're using artificial intelligence to match their needs of their brands and their manufacturers. And they just raised their Series A few days ago. What they're doing is fantastic in India. A few organizations here in the US, they're trying to work in this sphere to provide a design platform or a design transaction platform Clo3D, Browzwear, they're developing fantastic patent libraries. We are actually thinking of using Browzwear's API to use their patent library. One startup that's out there is called VNTANA. I don't know how to pronounce theirs.
Super good.
Yes, they're fantastic. You can develop anything in 3D and just project it in AR or VR.
With your phone, you can see it on your table or next to your collection.
Exactly.
Amazing what they've done.
Exactly. 3D sampling is one of the main technologies that I think will go up. The feel factor, we are still analyzing that. How can we minimize the use of fabric for sampling? So this is one of the main problems that we are addressing, or we're thinking of, that, okay, let's go 3D sampling, but how does the brand or buyer know that how does the fabric feel? What if that doesn't work? Then you just wasted a lot of production time and fabric and everything. So that is a major roadblock, I think, in the field of technology or innovation for this industry. So 3D sampling is one of the main ones. Managing your whole chain into one platform, into a single platform, and then shop floor technologies. So Zilingo is working with shop floor technology right now, and they offer QC and QA, just an overall like holistic look on what's happening in your factory. So I think that's fantastic. They're looking to connect with multiple entities to grow. So I think that's a great way to do business. Right now, we're in that nascent stage where we're still figuring out that which set of combination of tools or technologies will fit the best for what type of buyers or what volume of buyers. And now that we're heading towards smaller quantity, faster fashion, so every style will not be made into millions of pieces of clothes, but more like a few thousand here and there. And then when they're sold out, new designs are going to be coming up.
What are the few pivotal points you would like to see in your future ecosystem?
Future ecosystem pivotal points. We want to be able to go into the fintech aspect of this industry. So financially empowering these manufacturers, these suppliers, these workers, so that they don't have to wait months on if, let's say, there's a lockdown or some brand went bankrupt. We want to be able to look into the financial aspect of this. And at the same time, we want to go into the shop floor technology as well. So we want to be able to incorporate IoTs and sensors on the shop floor so that anything that's going on the shop floor is actually not only human input, but it's automatically inputted into our platform via technology. So these are the two aspects that I see where we would be definitely major pivotal for us.
How do you see the industry in 10 years, if you have a vision for that?
I see the industry to be very transparent. By very, I mean we have reached the first or second step of transparency, and we are at that nascent stage of figuring out how to go further from there. In terms of the manufacturing side, I see that more factories are coming up where they're compliant, and every step of the factory is being audited, not only just by the brand, because the idea that I get is that a lot of these factories, they only stay compliant when the brand is requiring them. Otherwise, I mean, why would they? That's kind of the mindset they have. So I want that mindset to be changed in the next 10 years, so that these factories understand that even if a brand is not ordering from them, they can do their own brand. And I see this in a lot of these factories. They're trying to go like private label on their own, even if not internationally, but locally. So, for example, a lot of these factories have dead stock. They manufactured something, order didn't go through, now what to do with it? So a lot of them, they're repurposing these dead stock clothing, and they're pushing it through their private label to the local market. And the local market is buying that. So just restructuring of the whole ecosystem in the manufacturing side. And then in 10 years, I see brands to be more open to show what's going on to the whole customer base. I see in 10 years that all these big brands, they're just going to be main hubs you will not, I don't think at least, you will not see H&M stores anymore or Zara stores anymore, but you'll see their own private labels. So I forget the names of these private labels that H&M has started, but depending on price levels, they have some private labels and how compliant or how organic or all that. So I would like to see them to push those more instead of the whole brand of H&M. I want to see them push the whole concept of being open more through these smaller name brands, so that the customer can feel more connected. That, okay, I bought XYZ, and because I bought XYZ, I can be at peace of mind that I didn't contribute to some slave labor or somebody on the other side of the world feeling horrible because I made a choice to go to the mall and make this purchase.
Yeah, definitely giving a different use to that extra dollar, that extra $2, but a totally cleaner and leaner supply chain in the background. Cool. Thank you very much, Asif. It's been a pleasure to hear you. I mean, I think it's the first time we have someone from Bangladesh in our podcast. I've been to Dhaka a few times, and honestly, it's to see how the fashion industry has such a big impact in a country. It's so great to talk to you and to for people who are listening and watching this to see the reality of how our garments are manufactured beyond just what the brands tell you, but how it affects the reality of the people that are behind it. So thank you very much for sharing that with us.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you very much.
Cool.
This was the Supply and Chain podcast. You can see more episodes on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. Remember to leave a review, like, and subscribe if you want more content like this. See you next time.